Would anybody like to answer this question? Any of these questions? Anyone?
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead.
Sir, I would like to answer the first question of what do you understand by attitude and aptitude. Here, firstly, we can begin with defining both these terms. Attitude is a psychological tendency that is expressed by the valuation of a particular entity with some degree of favor or disfavor. It may range from extremely positive to extremely negative. And aptitude is a future potential which is related to specific work. It can be physical, mental, or both. And outstanding aptitude can be considered talent. And in the next part, we can give an example uh, to uh, to clarify this both this concept. For example, a ship engine failed and no one could fix it. So they brought in a mechanical engineer with 40 years of experience. He inspected the engine very carefully, top to bottom, and after looking things over, the guy reached into his bag and pulled out a small hammer. He gently tapped something, instantly the engine burst back into life and it was fixed. And a week later, the owner of the ship got his bill for $10,000. The owner was enraged as this engineer hardly did anything and asked him to send an itemized bill. And the reply from the engineer was like this: the tapping with the hammer cost $2, and knowing where to tap and how much forcefully to tap equals $9,190. Thank you, sir.
Okay, good enough. But the first thing, definition, awesome, good. But the example you took was not that appropriate. We'll discuss that. So anyone, like a new month, half year we have completed, still half of the year is left. Let us give like women empowerment. Ladies first. Anyone? Next, ladies chance. Any of the questions, even the first question.
Hello, sir.
Please.
Hello. Sir, could I explain second one?
Please. Language is not a criteria. You can use in any language. Any question.
Okay, sir.
Madam,
Actually,
little bit louder, madam. Your voice is not that good, not audible.
sir, is that audible now?
Okay.
Actually, when we are considering the values as static or dynamic, but when we consider values are either static or dynamic,
Okay.
values are relatively permanent
Okay.
because values are not standard, because they change from person to person and they are depending upon circumstances and the situations of a person. Hence, we can confirm that values are either static or dynamic. They are relatively permanent. And when we consider the features of relatively permanent, we can say that they are source of identity. That means we have stable identity for each person, and that can be result of massive investment. Because, for example, when we consider our freedom struggle, uh, it is a long way that we got freedom, and because of what we say, the values and the thought process of the freedom fighters has very long to develop the freedom struggle. And when we consider it as relative permanent, sudden change results in imbalance, so we can say that they are relatively permanent. And it is also resistance to change, hence we can say that they are either static or dynamic.
Okay. Well
That's
tried.
it, sir.
Well tried. Anyone? Any other question? Gagan, can you try any question or the same? Any of the already told questions? Okay. Let's not discuss too much. I will discuss this thing. Not a problem. We'll complete the things which I thought of completing afterwards. These are the things which I have already explained. without wasting much of your time, we'll go ahead and discuss this thing. Definitely. Better try, very tried.
Hello.
Okay. Next one, please look into this question. Please go through these questions. These are the previous year questions from essay. This is section A. Please go through them. Number one, briefly. Don't think about these things. Life is long journey between human beings and being human. So being human means what comes to your mind? Our Salman Khan, being human and human beings. Mindful manifesto is the catalyst to a tranquil self. Right? Next, ships do not sink because of water around them. Ships sink because of water that gets into them. Third one. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Dear students, don't you think this is purely based on a social science question? Think it over. Don't you think many of the things are related to something like psychology, something like philosophy, and more related to our ethics paper? This is one part. Out of 4 questions, we have to answer one. Next, similarly, section B. See here too. Culture is what we are. We discussed what is culture, a very, very important thing. See, it has come. Many of my students have written this. Civilization is what we have. There can be no social justice without economic prosperity. But economic prosperity without social justice is meaningless. See, I was dealing with social and political life 6th and 7th standard. I have dealt these things in detail. We'll discuss that also. Patriarchy is the least noticed. Patriarchy is the least noticed, yet the most significant structure of social inequality. Next is technology has the salient factor in international relations. This can be said to be a direct topic. We can consider not. We can consider this is a purely essay topic. This topic is present in ethics. Ethics in international relations. In fact, it's an important dimension. Technology. So we'll discuss all these things. So why I took up this is ethics paper is one paper which is more useful. I'm very carefully using the term. I'm not saying 100% useful. It's the only paper which is more useful for your essays and also your interview. We take up correlating to interview also what we have to do essay also. I got once out of 200 marks, then it was for 200. I got 130 marks. Now it is for 250 marks. So I will explain that essay also, like how I wrote all these things. Just to show that the things can be answered it's at the fag end of the session, right? Let us dwell upon. Dear students, our approach, our thought, everything will be to get first rank. But what I request, my dear students, forget about the result. If you just think like I have to get first rank, everything will be different. Like you can't think, imagine the stress and strain. You feel that I should be the number 1 in hard work, number 1 in smartness. Any civil service aspirant should forget about the result. They have to concentrate only on studying. If you concentrate on the result, you will be just in anxious condition. You'll be tensed whether I get or not. There are competitors, those who are writing number, all these things. Just do your duty. Results are bound to come because in this technology age, nobody can concentrate and nobody can 100% do the things. If you are also in among them, don't worry. Just improve upon. You should be comparing to yourself, not anyone. Have you done the most of what you thought? That's it. Or if not possible to do also, have you tried to do the best? That is more than sufficient. I ask you just take one day at a time. Even if you think that one day at a time for next UPSC prelims, you'll be hardly having 400, 500 steps to take. You have to squeeze that one day very much. forget about the result. If you think about result, you will get tensed, right? So yesterday we were discussing that our point was clear that there are many things ethical in religion, but ethics is not religion. And also it is not about our feelings. It is not about the law. It is not about the standards with respect to society. It is not that we cannot say that I don't know. So these were the things which we discussed. Let me ask you one question. Say you are the judge. You are a judge. A child or a primitive tribe who is not having any idea of the things, while playing with that, somehow it shoots somebody. So what will be your judgment for that? Next, think it over. If someone places a gun in your hand or in my hand and pulls the trigger, somebody has died. So what is the punishment you are going to give? Another example. If someone threatens Raghu with gun and he says, you have to do that, you have to shoot that, and he does, what will be the punishment you will be giving to Raghu? Will it be same as killing someone in cold blood? Is there anything similarity here? Are the judges, are the law taking cognizance of these things? Child or a primitive man, they don't have knowledge that this is the gun. If you shoot, others will die. If someone places gun in your hand and pulls the trigger, you are not voluntarily doing that. Definitely, since the gun is in your hand, you have triggered the thing. You know you have the knowledge also, but you have not voluntarily done. If someone threatens to do something, if someone asks for some gratification or something to get the things done, you are forced to do something. Can you consider all these things while giving judgment? Do the judges take cognizance of all these things? First is you are not having knowledge. You need knowledge. If you don't have knowledge, say for example, simply think that there is a small stick. There is a small stick on the road. You went and you are walking on the road. You just picked that stick, blast. So can we take you as a culprit? What are the things which make the judge to give less punishment or not to give any punishment at all? Is there anything related to these things when we are talking about ethics? Dear students, actus humanus. What is this? Sorry. Actus hominis. These are the things which are actus hominis. What do you mean that? Undeliberate action. You are doing without knowledge. You are not voluntarily doing. You are not freely doing those things. So these are actus hominis. On the other hand, you have got actus humanus. What is this actus humanus? And what is that? Here, my dear students, ethics focuses on human actions. And actus humanus, deliberate human action. That which is done by knowledge, voluntary and freely done. So the previous examples which we have taken, all these things are not the subject matter of ethics. Please carefully listen to these things. Any act done without a prior knowledge, any act that is done without their own voluntarily or done without freedom, not freely done, not voluntarily done, not done with knowledge, then they are not the matter of ethics. These are known as undeliberate human action. And actus hominis. Actus hominis. Actus hominis. Just remember this. This is a very important and often used. I won't be telling you to mug up some things, but when I say those things, they are very, very important. Actus hominis. It is easy to remember. Actus humanus, human beings. Humans, you can remember like that. So actus humanus means those things which are done with knowledge, voluntary done, freely done, and ethics focuses on human actions. Actus humanus, deliberate human action. Ethics focuses on human action and actus humanus, deliberate human action, not on actus hominis. Meghana, please mute your phone. Just simple 2 words, my dear students. Actus humanus, actus hominis, human. So you can take like that. Ethics focuses only on human actions. What do you understand by human actions? According to Saint Thomas Aquinas, ethics focuses only on human actions. Human actions means an actus humanus, deliberate human action that is done with the knowledge, that is voluntary done, that is freely done, that is done with an intention, that is deliberately done, not actus hominis, undeliberate human action. According to Saint Thomas Aquinas, following 3 requisites must be concurrently present for an action to be human. We took up the example of our culture. We said that they have to be passed down from one generation to another generation. They have to be learned, and most members of the society should accept that one. All these things should be simultaneously present. When you took up aptitude, we said that it is an inborn character. It is related to work. It is future potential. Aptitude plus practice or training leads to ability. Like that, these 3 have to be present concurrently. In the same way, for anything to be called as human action, for anything to be taken as a subject matter of ethics, they have to be done with knowledge. There must be some knowledge involved. There must be voluntariness. There must be voluntariness present in that action. Action must also be freely done. Is it clear, students? Very easy to remember. Knowledge, voluntariness, and with freedom. The examples I have given, internalize them. According to Saint Thomas Aquinas, all these things have to be concurrently present, not only one. Actus humanus, human beings. Actus humanus means human actions. Ethics is concerned with only human actions, not actions of human. Human actions are these. Actions of human means they can be any action without this. Right? So knowledge, what is this? We cannot will anything unless we first know it. The actor must have some knowledge of the end or purpose of the action, omission or the effect or either. Can you think of doing something? Say, for example, you have come for civil service. Have you come for civil service preparation without any knowledge? You are working day in and day out. You feel that you are somewhere in some island, or like you are alone preparing in some area. You are talking to yourself, nobody to listen to you. Very isolated, very uncertain future. Have you come to preparation without knowledge? No, you have come to UPSC preparation with knowledge. You know that there is reservation. You know that there are lakhs of people writing. You know that there are already people who have cleared various stages and they will be writing. And also, we won't be willing to do anything if you don't have any idea. Only when you have the knowledge, you'll be knowing the pros and cons. You know the end result. Without this knowledge, if you're doing something, then it is not the matter of ethics. It is out of syllabus for ethics. Knowledge is very, very essential because our willingness to do something comes only with the knowledge. So, and human action always have some degree of knowledge. Knowledge is an essential requirement of an action to be human. If knowledge is not there, it is not at all a human action. We cannot will anything unless we first know it. So knowledge of some kind is an absolute requirement for any action to be human. Say for example, tree is growing. It's simply growing. It is not having any knowledge. Like if I grow, what will happen? No. We cannot take these kind of things. The actor must have some knowledge of the end or the purpose of actions, omission, or the effect of either. This makes an action different from the mere wish, which is not an action per se. So an actor must know, you should have knowledge of the end outcome, the purpose of the action. Not doing some action also. Say for example, you have to take the responsibility of your wife, your children. So you're not acting upon. That is also you're doing with knowledge. Actions doesn't mean only taking the actions. Your omissions of the actions and the effects are also taken into consideration, my dear students. So knowledge is one of the important things because we cannot will until and unless we have some knowledge. Second is voluntary, means it must proceed from the will. You're not doing anything voluntarily means what does this mean? Say for example, gun was put in your hand. You are the person, you know you have the knowledge, but you have not voluntarily not triggered the thing. The will is the cause of our action. The will is defined as that which enables us to incline or strive after an object appreciated as good. What is will? Will is defined as that which enables us to incline or strive after an object appreciated as good. Why you are willing to do something? Why you have come to civil service? Because you are inclining or striving towards that. Because you appreciate civil service, you appreciate IAS. Voluntariness includes not only direct actions but also omissions and effects of both actions and omissions. So voluntariness doesn't imply only actions. Some actions which you are supposed to do, if you are not doing, they are also included. Knowledge and voluntariness is very, very important. Voluntariness is that which proceeds from the will. Will is the cause of our action. Yes, students, this is the expanded version of the thing what I have told you. If someone places a gun in your hand and pulls the trigger, it is obvious that your will does not control or cause the action, and therefore the shooting is not voluntary, not human. The second element in the human action is that it must be voluntary. That is, it must proceed from the will. The will is defined as the faculty that enables us to incline or strive after the object appreciated as good. The will controls the performance of the external action. The will is the cause of our actions. Action proceeds directly or indirectly from the will. Some action proceeded directly from the will, such as consenting indirectly through other faculties commanded by the will, such as thinking, seeking, and taking. Actions proceeded directly or indirectly from will. Such actions proceed directly from the will, such as consenting, indirectly through other facilities commanded by will, like thinking. So the things you do with voluntariness, maybe thinking, seeing, all these things. So, my dear students, second most important thing is voluntariness for anything to be called as human action. Next is freely done. Whether you are doing the things with freedom. Means here, what is that? You are having the choice. What is that freely done means? The key word is choice. You have got choice to do. When you are forced to do something, then you don't have choice. Say, for example, you want to pursue MBBS, medicine, but your parents tell you to go to engineering. You're forced to go for engineering means here you're not freely taking the decision. You're forced to do something. You don't have choice. Otherwise, after getting through 10+2, if you have the choice of taking anything, arts, history, anything, engineering, then you have got choice. Then you have got freedom. Freedom is the greatest virtue. Every free action is voluntary. Very, very important. Please concentrate. Every free action means wherever you have got choice. Wherever you have got choice, then what is the meaning? Wherever you have got choice, then you have doing the things freely. Every free action is voluntary because the actor carried out the action without restraint. But all voluntary actions may not be freely done. See, you are beating someone. Recently, there was a case, murder case. You're murdering someone voluntarily, but you may not be doing that freely. Someone might have threatened you, or someone might have lured you to do those things. Is this clear? Every free action is voluntary. So, my dear students, if this is the voluntary, free action is like this. This is free action. Means this is voluntary. Means anything which is voluntary is free action. Right? Every free action is a voluntary because the actor carried out the action without restriction. But all voluntary actions, see this area, this all voluntary action may not be freely done. Operating under conditions such as force, fear that prevent the action from being freely done, the actor was unable to exercise his choice. It generally happens. Say, for example, a girl want to pursue IAS, but their parents force. No, if you want to do anything, go to your husband's house, you do IAS, IPS, otherwise you do international service. But our responsibility is to get you married. So they are forcing, you are getting married. So this is not freely done because you don't have choice. The key word, my dear students, because you may all these things may appear very like confusing. Involuntariness, there are some things where you are having components of freedom also, but all the things which are freely done are not voluntary. The figure will be the best thing for you to remember. So, dear students, the third element in the human action is that it must be freely done. Human beings have free will. All animals, all plants are not having this. This is the one which differentiates. Free will is the capacity to act or not to act in one way as opposite to another. Here, what are all these things? Capacity to act, not to act in one way has opposite to another. Means what is that main thing? You have got choice. Means you have got freedom. Free will means that human beings have choices. Although some human actions are voluntary, in that actor carries out the action. Not every voluntary action is free. You might have done voluntarily, but not freely. Some fear, some threat would have been behind that. Right? These are the things which are very, very important for you, my dear. So what is the take home? Human actions. What do you understand by human actions? Actions that are done by humans consciously, with knowledge, deliberately, and in view of an end. Only these are known as human action, and ethics is concerned with only these. If any of these things are missing, then it is not a subject matter of ethics. Only human action are the subject matter of ethics, and actions of humans are not the subject matter of ethics. Yes, students, I always tell this formula, the mantra, whenever you come across two things like repo, reverse repo, CLR, SLR, if you try to remember both, you will be confused. Just remember one thing, the other thing is the opposite of that. So you just remember human actions. Human actions are the subjects of ethics, not actions of human. Actions of human may not be actions of you please concentrate here. Actions of humans, not human actions. Actions of humans may not be willfully, voluntarily, consciously, and deliberately done, but all the same, they are done by the humans. Did you get the difference? So, actions of the humans are done by humans, but they may not be voluntarily, willfully, consciously, deliberately done. Right? If they are voluntarily, consciously, and deliberately done, then they become human actions. Then they become part of the subject matter of your ethics. Clear? Next. Ethics deals with only human actions. Ethics does not deal with animal actions or actions of humans. If any of these three conditions, knowledge, voluntariness, freedom, is absent, then the action is not human and it is not the subject to be examined in ethics. I think very briefly, in a different way, in many, many ways I have told. So ethics deals only with human actions. Human actions means all these three conditions should be present: knowledge, voluntariness, and freedom. Then only we take up as a subject matter of ethics. Then it's one of the most important things. I asked you in the beginning, if you are a judge, what will you do? Human actions and legal system. Here, in this regard, the major focus of ethics is on human actions. Also, the starting point for most legal systems, they are primarily interested in human actions and following that in their legality or illegality. Very, very meaningful. The major focus of ethics is human actions. Human actions means knowledge, with knowledge, voluntary and freely done. Also, starting point of the legal system when you are a judge. This is the starting point. We are not saying that human actions are the end. This is the starting point for the judge to take the judgment. They are primarily interested in human actions. A judge, before giving the actions, will be concerned. First, they want to see whether it is a human action or not, whether it is done with knowledge or not, whether it is voluntarily done or not, whether it is freely done or not. Afterwards, following that in their legality or illegality. Are you getting me? First, judge will see. It's the starting point in legal system also. You have taken a case. Say, for example, this was a live example, real life situation. There were two neighbors, A and B. B was a very soft, polite person. Maybe you think that he is from a community who doesn't eat non-veg, things like that. Thinks that A is a very aggressive person. A is, for some reason or something like that, somehow he is throwing garbage. B somehow politely took off the garbage, somehow used to those things. 1 year over, 2 year over, this guy was doing the same thing. On one fine day, B is a very, very simple, very, very honest person. But over a period of time, he got so frustrated that once the argument went and this, he was not able to control anything. He just took one knife which was there in kitchen, not long or something like that. He killed A. Can we consider this as a cold-blooded murder? With knowledge, voluntarily, freely done? No. So here, first point is whether it is a human action or not. Afterwards, we will apply that. If he is done with knowledge, voluntarily done, and freely done, then we'll apply Indian Penal Code, all these things, and come to the. Is this a point clear? Because it's often asked, law and ethics. This is one of the dimensions, a very, very important one. On one hand, prosecuting lawyer tend to see or show all actions as human actions and therefore subject to the scrutiny of law. The person, the prosecutor, the lawyer who want to prosecute the culprit, he want to show that all the actions are human. He want to show that the actions were done with knowledge, voluntarily done, freely done, therefore subject matter for scrutiny of law. On the other hand, the defense lawyer tend to show that the actions of the defendants are not human actions and therefore defendant is not culpable. They want to show that it was not done with knowledge, voluntarily it was not done, it was not freely done, there was some force, voluntarily it was not done, he has not done with the knowledge. Are you getting the things? This is the basis of even legal system also. Human actions are the starting points of ethics. Human actions are the starting points of ethics. While civil law may look on both the human action and actions of human as targets of scrutiny under the law, ethics limits its view to solely human action. This is very, very important. See here, starting point in the civil law is whether to see the actions are human or not, human actions or not. But it doesn't mean that if you are done without any knowledge, you won't be left free, right? After that, they will apply the thing. It depends. In civil law, in justice, may look at both the human actions and the actions of human as a target of scrutiny under the law. Ethics limits is solely to human actions. Is this clear? Ethics limits to only human actions. In law, you have both the things. The starting point is human action. Afterwards, application of law. Saint Thomas Aquinas, knowledge must, they have to some of the things, they should have, everything should be done with knowledge, voluntarily and freedom be done. Then only we can take that as a matter of ethics. The three criteria imply that there may be other factors that render actions non-human and therefore not the subject matter of ethics. What are they? See, according to Saint Thomas Aquinas and according to the philosophical things of ethics, these things should be there for anything to be called as human actions, and human actions are only the subject matter of ethics. So what is the opposite of this? Knowledge, ignorance. If you are doing something with ignorance, then also it is not taken into consideration. So my dear students, as a corollary of these things, you have to take the opposite of these things also. The three criteria imply that there must be other factors that render the actions non-human and therefore not the subject to scrutiny in ethics. They are ignorance. You're done with ignorance. If you're done with something, passion, fear, violence, or some temperament, some passion, some pathological disease condition, this we can say impediments to human action. Yes, students. In addition to these things, if these things are also present, then we can say that this is not human action. There is nothing different. The opposite of knowledge. We are saying that in human action, it should be done with knowledge, means ignorance. We'll explain these things in detail later. As of now, you have to take these three as a major criteria, and everything opposite to it also you have to consider. Ethics and human action. My dear students, one more like an assignment or a thought for you. Just think it over. What might be the meaning of ethics and human action? This is a very, very deep concept. After like deliberating on the philosophers, I will be explaining these things. This is the syllabus. First chapter is ethics and human interference. In this one, you have to understand the things in a very, very clear way. It has like overarching influence on all the topics. These are the 7 chapters plus case studies. You should have a very fair understanding. Attitude, aptitude, emotional intelligence, moral thinkers, civil service values, property in governance, and case studies. This is our first chapter as it is given in the syllabus. So, ethics and human interference, in that what you are doing, essence determinates consequences of human actions. See, we will discuss this one. So, they have given essence of ethics, determinants of ethics, and consequences of ethics in human actions, dimensions of ethics, human values, and inculcation of values. These are the 3 things which are present in your first chapter. Is this clear to you? What are the 3 important things in first chapter? That is human actions, human values, and inculcation of values. Yes, students, this is the way you have to expand and read the thing. The first chapter, you have got essence, determinants, consequences of ethics in human actions, dimensions, ethics in private and public, human values, lessons from the lives and teachings of leaders, reformers, and administrators, inculcation of values, in that role of family in inculcation of values, society and education institutions. Means here, my dear students, 13 topics are already there for you here. You have to understand 13 topics in the first chapter clearly. Right? Having said that, let us understand in a depth way what is ethics. So understand that before I go into those things, let me tell you, for any examination, for any UPSC examination, you have to completely cover the syllabus, you have to go through previous year questions, and with respect to UPSC, you have to refer second ARC reports and DOPT, Department of Personnel Training, and NCRT. These are the books from which the questions are coming. I'll be referring only these things for you. To begin with, see, these are the questions. We'll be taking up these questions. I have deciphered all the previous year questions here. I'll be providing the PDF of this. Please go home. We'll try to answer all of these things. But if you answer now, you may be confused. Let us go in depth. Afterwards, you will be knowing the things, dimensions, ethics in private and public, human values here. From great leaders, as I told, see, for example, Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi is everywhere. Every year they are asking about Mahatma Gandhi. Abdul Kalam and Mahatma Gandhi are the most frequently asked people in ethics paper. So you should know everything what they have said. With respect to inculcation, these are the previous year questions. Right? Moving forward, my dear students, as I told you, I have given a very, very important thing for you. See, there is some excuse for those who are appearing in 2021 prelims. They may not have time, but for those who are appearing in 2022, please do the homework on a continuous basis on a regular basis. What are they? Every day, one editorial. Read it as many times as you want and write in your own words. And keep that center sheet in some place. In 1 year means you will be having only 365 editorials sheets. Complete sheet you keep, not a problem. That is one thing. Because of this, your comprehension will increase, your writing speed increase, your vocabulary increase. Without good vocabulary, it is not possible, because many times questions will be having some of the terminologies which you may not understand. So vocabulary is important. For that one editorial you have to go through. Instead of simply reading the perennial things, Corona for the last 1 year, you read about Corona. It's just only one topic. One day if you Google all the things related to Corona, you'll get 1 hour. Good comprehension, you have to improve. How to improve? That is the one I am telling you. One editorial every day. Prelims is over for you, especially with respect to CSAT. Writing speed, very, very important. Out of 20 questions given, most of the students, even toppers, they attend only 16. in last 5 to 6 minutes, in maximum 10 minutes, they'll be simply touching another 4 to 5 questions. This is because of lack of speed. Syllabus, you have to go in sequence along with the previous year questions and case studies. You will get 167. It is achievable. Previous years, many have got more than 160. 167 means you are just getting 67% of the marks. Moving forward with respect to these things, yesterday and today we dealt that ethics is not all these things. It's not religion. It cannot be equated to feelings or to law or the societal things or to the thing that I don't know. Then what it is? Please concentrate here. I told that we cannot equate ethics to law. But in your syllabus, UPSC has mentioned one important thing. In chapter number 6, it mentions that laws, rules, regulations, and conscience as a source of ethical guidance. What does this mean? Sir, you are saying that ethics is not law. We cannot equate ethics to law. But how can UPSC say this laws, rules, regulation, and conscience as a source of ethical guidance? Dear students, the answer for this you won't find anywhere. I somehow found this in second ARC report. Let me just elaborate on these things according to the second ARC. I am not using anything extra other than what second ARC has said. According to second ARC, ethics provides the basis for creation of the laws and rules. Please concentrate, please, like free your mind with all the prejudice till whatever we have discussed. Now come to this topic. Ethics provide the basis for creation of the laws. The laws what we have a foundation, have a basis in ethics. Don't you feel like that? They have a basis in ethics. The laws, rules are enacted by the elected representatives of the people in their legislature. Ethics provides the basis for creation of the laws and rules. This is what second ARC says. Laws are based on, laws have a basis in ethics. Ethics provides the basis for creation of these laws and rules. It is the moral ideas of the people that give rise to and shape the character of laws and rules. Very, very powerful sentence, my dear students. Please listen to here. It is the moral ideas of the people that give rise to and shape the characteristics of the laws and rules. What according to you are the right and wrong? What according to society are the right and wrong? The moral ideas of the people, the moral ideas of the society give rise to and shape the characteristic of law. See, the law in China is different from the law in America. The law in India is not same as the law in other countries. Because the law what we have is based on the moral ideas of the people. Is it clear? So what is constitution? Constitution is a law, the basic law. On what basis it is found? It is based on the moral ideas of the constitutional makers. Means constitutional makers, constitutional assembly, members of the constitutional assembly were representing you. Moral ideas of the people give rise to and shape the characters of laws and rules. Our legal system emanates from a vision, a shared vision of what is good and just. If you go back to, say, pre-Civil War American Constitution, American laws, there, according to that, legal system emanates from a shared vision of what is good and right. There they thought that slavery was good, slavery was just, so they had that. Now they think that slavery is the worst thing, so they have and that. Apartheid till recently, the people shared that it's good. Legal system emanates from the shared vision of what is good and what is just. The law, what we have, the constitution, what we have, is just a reflection of what people think. It's a shared vision, how we want to build a society. So, my dear students, this is a very, very crux and also very important because it is given by second year students. Laws and rules are enacted by the elected representatives of the people in the legislature. Ethics provide the basis for creation of the laws and rules. It is a basis for the creation of the laws and rules. It is a moral ideas of the people that give rise to and shape the characteristic of the laws and rules. Our legal system emanates from the shared vision of what is good and just. Then what is ethics? You said all these things. See, today we have to a greater extent touched ethics and law. Along with that, we dealt with very, very important thing, human actions. There are some things which cannot be considered or which are not the subject matter of ethics. Then what is ethics? Yes, students, ethics is set of standards. Ethics is set of principles. Set of standards that society places on itself, which guide behavior, choice, and actions. This is a very, very important definition. I hope by now you are familiar with these things. And other things given like among all the 15 years report, if second year RC has said something like ethics, I have brought and I have put here. All the things related to ethics. According to second year RC, ethics is a set of standards. So what is ethics? Ethics is a set of standards that society places on itself, which guides behavior, choice, and action. All other also the same impact to a greater extent. In another area, it says that ethics is set of principles of right conduct. Right conduct. Ethics has been defined as a set of values and principles which guide behavior, choice, and action. Ethics is a set of standards that help to guide conduct. See, everywhere, anywhere, in all the 15 years report, second ARC has told something about ethics. This is the only thing, my dear. In that you can take anyone. I found the first one comprehensive, so I have been telling this. So all mean the same. Then I said that ethics means set of standards and principles. Then the question arises as to what is the supreme ethical standard? On what basis can we come to conclusion that something is right, something is good, something is fair, unfair, all these things? Then what is the supreme ethical standard? Yes, students, the most accepted view is that ethics is located in ends, and other next to this is ethics is located in means. What is this? Means are the ways to which an action is done. Ends means outcomes. Ends means outcomes, results, consequences. They mean the same. According to one, ethics is located in the ends. Ethics is located in the outcomes, results, consequences. When you are trying to analyze or when you are taking the things as to analyze whether it is ethical or not, according to one view, only outcomes should be taken. No other thing. If the outcomes are good, then it is ethical. They are not concerned about the means through which you are doing. Here, you are helping the poor. You are helping 1,000 people. That is very good. Outcome is good. So it is ethical. It is immaterial, according to first one. Whether you have robbed, whether you have stealed, whether you went to some institution, worked there, it doesn't matter for that. Means to say that according to some, according to most accepted view, one of the most accepted view, ethics is located in ends. Only ends are the things which have to be taken into consideration. Only the outcomes, results are taken into consideration. This is one of the things you often see. Not only with respect in society, this is the thing. Whether you have cleared IAS or not, that is the thing. Then won't be asking any other thing, because there are many public service commissions, especially state public service commissions, where corruption is rampant, where lot of percentage of seats are sold. In fact, here they will be considering only the ends, the means they are not considering. On the other hand, second view says that no, no, no. Forget about the ends, forget about the outcomes. The means which you are doing are important. If you are doing your duty, if you are applying the correct means, even if the results are negative, even if the results are bad, it can be called as it. So dear students, to say the crux of the thing, according to what, to the question, answer to the question, what is the supreme ethical standard? According to one of the most accepted one, ethics is located in ends. If the ends, results, outcomes, or consequences are good, then it is ethical. Through which these ends are got, results are got, outcomes are got immaterial. Means to say, in a slang word, according to first view, means are out of syllabus. They are not taking means into consideration. On the other hand, second view, no, outcomes are out of syllabus. They are not taken into consideration. We are taking into consideration only the means, how you did that. This is the second one. And there are many others also. According to them, ethics is related to virtues, courage, wisdom. If these kind of virtues are present, then it is ethical. What a virtuous person does in that situation, then whatever may be the outcome, whatever may be the means, it is ethical. Virtuous persons do those things which is most appropriate. So virtues are ethical. The others have right. They say that we all have the right to liberty. We should be allowed to do whatever we want. Our rights, our liberty should be withheld, should be restricted only when our freedom is coming in the way of others' freedom. What does this mean? Say, for example, freedom of swinging your hands. You can swing the hands the way you want, to the speed you want, until and unless it is not disturbing, or if you are not coming in the way of others' freedom, you are not hitting the other individual beside you. So, rights approach, it says that individual rights, which give rise to a phenomenon known as human rights, which we'll discuss. All should be given the full freedom. Your freedom should be restricted only when it is coming in the way of others' freedom. What is the limitation for your freedom? The limitation, the only limitation for your freedom is if it is coming in the way of others' freedom, others' liberty. Otherwise, you can do anything. Can you apply this one? Say, for example, I'm a drunkard. I'll like drinking alcohol. I want to take some hallucinogens, drugs, but I'm not harming anyone. Because of some reason, on the other way, in the other chance, I have like sexual orientation for the same sex. That is not coming in the way of others. That should be allowed. These are the principles based on which, why many of the states in America and in Western Europe, they have liberalized same-sex marriages are there. In some cases, like taking the narcotics, things like that, lot of liberty there. They have legalized prostitution also. And they are asking prostitution with license. Why? Because you may infect other people with some deadly diseases. So if you have a license, regular checkup will be there. So You are not coming in the way of others' freedom, or you are not affecting others. Otherwise, you are left to do whatever you want. This is your body, this is your hand. Nobody should say what is right, what is wrong. They have the power. They can say only when it is coming in the way of their freedom. Otherwise, everything you can do, you can do. Right? That is one view. According to them, that is the ethical, that is the basis for ethics. And another, for others, it is a contract which should be the basis for deciding whether things are ethical or not. Say, for example, contract. Here, in contract, once the contract is done, it is the end of the thing. When we discuss, we'll discuss whether the contract was done freely, with force, all these things. Here, say for example, marriage. What is marriage? Don't say that these are the things which are made in heaven. This is a civil contract. You go and register and you will, this is a civil contract. So you have to follow some of the rules, regulations, duties, obligations. Violation of that will lead to unethical. So these are the 5 important things which locate ethics in all these things. According to one view, ethics is located only in ends. See here, very, very important. According to these views, they say that they are present, they are located only in that one. They are not saying that ethics is present in ends, means, virtues. No. All the things not concurrently present, only one. Because different philosophers have taken different approaches. For some, say for example, this is, you are the individual, right? You are doing some work. This is the end result. This is the end. This is the means. So for one, ethics is located in the means. For other, ethics is located in the ends. For others, ethics is located in the virtues of the people. Virtues. For others, ethics is located in the freedom what we get. Rights approach. For others, ethics is located in the contract what we make with others. And in all these cases, they are taking and they are talking about things as independent. They are not saying that contract plus rights plus virtues. No. All other things are like out of syllabus for them. They're talking about only one of those things. Let us elaborate on this. What is this? Most accepted view is that ethics is located in the ends. What is ends? It is your consequences. Means it is results. So those people who says that ethics is located in consequences, only the ends are the things which have to be taken into consideration when considering whether something is ethical or not. They are known as consequentialists, and this is known as consequentialism. This is also known as teleology. Teleology. Teleo means end. One of the most important, very carefully listen to me, most important and representative of consequentialism is your utilitarianism. Is it clear? So consequentialism is a broader one which is concentrating on the consequences, outcomes, results, ends, all these things. In that, there is one thought, one philosophy which is known as, there are many, a true representative, that is your utilitarianism. This utilitarianism is given by Jeremy Bentham, a English philosopher. Let me repeat this again. According to consequentialism, ethics is located in the consequences. If you say that, that is enough. If you want, you can say consequences or results, ends or outcomes. Ethics is contingent on the consequences. among the consequentialist theories, one of the most representative, one of the most important, one of the most influential, one of the most accepted thing is utilitarianism propounded, given, explained by Jeremy Bentham, a British philosopher. Right? Go in depth with respect to these things. According to Jeremy Bentham, supreme ethical standard is to maximize happiness. The overall balance of pleasure over. See here, what we are discussing. It is a consequentialist theory. What is the consequence we are taking? We are taking of happiness. What is the outcome? Happiness. According to Bentham, the output which is giving maximum happiness is the one which is ethical. It is a supreme ethical standard. Whether to decide anything as ethical or unethical, we have to take up that which gives maximum happiness. What is the thing with respect to happiness? It's a balance of pleasure over pain. Say, for example, there are two acts, Act A and Act B. Think that Act A is giving 100 units of happiness, 100 units of pleasure. And it is also giving 10 units of pain. So what? So 90 units of happiness. Hypothetical thing, don't write this example, just for your understanding. I am doing this because these cannot be quantified like 100, all these things. I think that there is second one. It is giving 150 units of pleasure, and at the same time it is giving things that 55 units of pain. So what is the net? 95 happiness. Overall balance of pleasure over pain. So according to Bentham, B is the ethical one. If there are two policies, then a policy which is giving more happiness is the one which you have to take. Is this clear? Let me elaborate this. Say, for example, same thing that A is a policy. Think that there are 1,000 members in a society. In a country, there are 10,000 members. So you please add up the pleasure of all the 10,000, pleasure of all, summation of all 10,000, minus the pain of all. You are getting some amount. Say it is some, okay, some 100 unit you are getting, the net happiness. On the other hand, B, you are adding up the pleasure of all the 10,000 people. You are subtracting the pain of all the 10,000 people. Net, you are getting something. Say, for example, 105. Then you have to go for this policy. Here, very, very important. Please give due attention. Here, you are not considering the individual thing. Here, you are taking the societal thing. There is another thing. One important, utilitarianism is a societal concept, overall balance in the society. When this happiness, when you are restricting to individual, then it becomes hedonism, this individual pleasure. Utilitarianism, societal thing, right? We all are governed by the feelings of pain and pleasure. Pain and pleasure are our sovereign masters. Very important, please concentrate this one. Consequentialism says that for anything to determine, decide whether it's ethical or unethical, we have to consider the ends or the consequences of the outcome. In that, utilitarianism is an important consequentialist theory. For them, the consideration is happiness. That which is producing maximum happiness is ethical. What do you understand by happiness? It is the balance of pleasure over pain. It is said to be the overall balance because societal aspects are taken. Then you may ask me, okay, Bentham, okay, let me for a while take take the things for granted that happiness is the one which you have to consider. If something is giving more happiness, whatever nonsense you are doing, unethical, illegal, whatever you are doing, all are very happy. Or say in this case, society has been producing more happiness by one event, then that is ethical. Then you may ask me, okay, Bentham, what is the logic behind this one? Why you are taking happiness? Why you are not taking any other criteria other than happiness? For that, Bentham's answer is, we are all governed by the feelings of pain and pleasure. Pain and pleasure are our sovereign masters. Who is governing us? We say that Lord is governing us, God is governing us. This is that, no, it is the pain and pleasure, not any other thing. We always want to increase the pleasure and decrease the pain. Pain and pleasure are our sovereign master. The Lord for humans is pain and pleasure. They are our masters, supreme masters, sovereign masters. Say, for example, any aspect you take, you want to wake up at 5 o'clock. Why you won't wake up? Your body wants more pleasure. It doesn't want your body to be exposed to coldness. It wants to protect you. It wants to give you more pleasure. It doesn't want you to make a run, stress and strain, jogging, sitting in the chair, reading ethics. On that moment, it is not concerned. Anything. Don't you think like that? We are doing something or the other. Everything is determined by pleasure and pain. So, since pain and pleasure are our sovereign masters, since pain and pleasure are the things which are guiding everything of an individual, the overall balance of pleasure or pain is the happiness. So happiness is the correct criteria. Bentham says, I'm not using any illogical things. I'm not simply saying some my own whims and fantasies. I'm telling you and I'm giving you the facts. All individuals, we humans, want more pleasure and less pain. Means we want to be more happy. So happiness is the one. Happiness is the outcome which we have to take in the society. This is the argument of our great Bentham. Very, very important. Even in fact, most of the theories, most of the policies, and even in fact, most of our acts are based on utilitarianism. Then please concentrate and tell me whether these things are ethical or unethical. Or what do you think about this? In ancient Rome, they threw Christians to the lions in the Colosseum for the amusement of the crowd. In the ancient Rome, when Christianity was not the law of the land, only the Christians were in minority then. They were treated as culprits against nation, against religion, and they were thrown to lions in the Colosseum. Colosseum means something which you see in your gladiator movie. One hero will be there, the lions will come. The stadium-like thing. Colosseum for amusement of the crowd. Here, think that there are 1,000 people in the Colosseum. This 1,000 people are happy with like very, very happy. They're cheering. They're enjoying the thing. But only one, your gladiator, that hero, is the only one. Few Christians are being suffered. Say, for example, there is 2 Christians who are thrown. Suffering of 2. Let me take suffering of pleasure of 1,000 minus suffering of 2 means it is leading to maximum happiness. So according to Bentham, this is ethical. Why? Means are not important. We are concentrating on the overall balance of pleasure over pain. It is giving maximum happiness, most happiness to majority of the people. So it is ethical. And the other day we took the example of the city of happiness, in which we discussed there was a city which was full of happiness, but there was a building. In the basement of that, there was a small girl locked in a room with darkness, with no light, malnutrition. If this girl is brought out, the whole happiness of the whole city will vanish. 10,000 people in the city, all the people are happy, but only one girl is suffering in pain. So 10,000 minus 1. So it is ethical according to them. What is your opinion? If you are subscribing to this, you are also a consequentialist. If you say that it doesn't matter what means you take, whether you have achieved success or not, you used any mantra, tantra, or anything, did you get IAS? Then okay, outcome is good. Whether you copied, whether you contacted the question paper setters, it doesn't matter. One which is giving good outcome, maximum happiness is the one. On the other hand, we took up the lifeboat case also. According to Bentham, the fourth person, we discussed about a lifeboat which was lost in the sea because their ship broke down. They were some 1,000 miles away. 10 days, somehow they have some preservatives. For 8 days, after that, 10 plus 8. 8 days, they were starving. 19th day, they thought of lottery, but nobody agreed. On the 20th day, they killed one individual. They were eating. On the 24th day, they were produced to the port. According to Bentham, this is ethical. Because in that situation, if they would have not killed this, they have done out of necessity. All the 4 would have vanished. So according to Bentham, this is ethical. Dear students, according to you, what are the loopholes in this theory? If you can't criticize anything, what you will criticize? Are there any limitations to these things? Okay, this is a very, very common sense thing. Let me hear from you if you have got any objection to this thing. Is there any lack in it? Is there any mistake in these things? Is there anyone who says that these things are wrong for the following things? Anyone? Once again, ladies first. Anyone who can tell no? Okay.
Sir, I think there is lack of knowledge and no freedom of choice.
How, madam? Please go ahead.
Like for the sailor, the 4 standard sailors, they didn't have any other choice except for killing any of the one person. So that was the only choice that was given to them, and they did that. So there was no freedom of choice there.
Okay, but I want to interrupt you, madam. They had choice. They had the choice of sacrificing themselves. One would have come. They would have gone for lottery. They would have asked the consent. Instead of killing one without consent, they would have asked, is there anyone willing to give their life? Or some would have come up. They had choice. They have willingly killed. They know they have the knowledge also.
Okay.
Anyone? I'm not saying you are wrong. Just I'm countering the thing. We'll discuss the pros and cons later. Drawbacks. Anyone? What are the limitations of this one?
So the limitation is like this takes away the onus from choosing the correct means to achieve the correct output. Like people tend to not worry about what means they are choosing, but only worry about the result. So this doesn't like this doesn't ensure that the means chosen are correct.
What is wrong in this? 10,000 people are happy, only 2 are suffering. So it is making most of the people happy.
Uh, on the cost of what, sir? I think that is what it is lacking. It is not giving importance to on what cost are they having the pleasure. Like pleasure out of someone else's pain is not justified.
Okay, any other thing? Good one, in fact. These students, very, very well tried, but we'll elaborate to a greater extent in a detail about this, the limitation.
Happiness are right, not right things, sir.
Happiness,
Are not right always.
yes, very good point. So here the point is they are considering happiness. We cannot consider something as happy as something as good. They're entirely different things. Let me explain these things. Happiness is not good or right. So what they're saying, just because something is giving you happiness, we cannot say that it is good or right. Many things may give you happiness. So this cannot be taken as a standard. First of all, you're basing happiness as the criteria, as the outcome on which we have to take the things. In fact, happiness doesn't mean that it is right or good. On the other hand, you're taking that, you're defining happiness in terms of pleasure plus minus pain. What you get balance is happiness, you are saying. Because pain and pleasure are our sovereign masters. The objection says, no, you are simply wrong. If you are heeding to the pain and pleasure, then you are the slave of pain and pleasure. Let me elaborate this one. Say, for example, you are thirsty. You are thirsty. You are drinking water. Why? What is this thirst? That thirst is something which is given by biology. Your body needs some water. For that you are satisfying. Means what is that? Here you are acting as a slave to these biological needs. Your biological instinct, some chemical imbalance happens and somehow you have some drives towards opposite sex, towards money or anything. Then you are acting as a slave. You are obeying the law which is given by the nature. The law which is given by the nature. Or you are obeying a physical law or a biological thing. What is pain? What is pleasure? In the first place, you have not given yourself. You are just satisfying some laws which are given. A beautiful example is given for this. Say, for example, there is a stone. What happens if you drop this stone? It falls on the ground. This stone is not acting on its own. This stone is just acting as a slave to the laws of gravity. It is acting according to the law which is given by the nature. This is not given by himself. Pain and pleasure are not our sovereign masters. When you are acting, when you are heeding to pain and pleasure, here in fact you are acting as a slave to these things. And the other thing is, people are used as means, not an ends. Very, very important. Most often you won't find this example. Please concentrate. People are used as a means, not as an ends. What does this mean? It means people are used. Means Here you are using humanity. You are using humanity as a means to achieve some ends. Humanity is the highest thing, highest virtue possible. Say, for example, you are using, say, silver, you are using copper. By using copper, you are producing gold. Okay. But you are using gold and producing copper. This becomes wrong. What is the logic they are saying? They are saying that when you are using people as a means, you are using humanity as the means to achieve something, some outcome. Humanity is the highest form. How can you use that for something? There cannot be something which is greater than humanity. It may be bringing happiness to many. It may increase the pleasure, pain, or anything. But when you say that people are used as a means, it means that you are using humanity as a means. How can you get anything which is more valuable than humanity? Not possible. Humanity is the climax. So it cannot be used as a means. You are insulting the humanity itself. When you are using one person, say for example, that girl who was in the cellular, the Christians were thrown to the lion, the fourth one who was killed in the lifeboat case. Here, you may think that one individual is affected. No, you are using humanity as a means. You are insulting humanity. You are treating them as an object. You are not treating them as humans. This is the meaning. So using people as means is the meaning. This is the meaning. Then you may ask me, then what is the supreme ethical standard? Then you said that all these things are not correct. You said that first of all, happiness, you cannot take this one because happiness does not mean something good or bad, right or wrong. You have based happiness saying that pain and pleasure are our sovereign masters. We all depend on this one. No, this is wrong. This is the thing. The criteria itself is wrong. You are taking and you are thinking that they are our sovereign masters. They are the people who are controlling us. That is the reason you have taken this and you have come up with happiness. No, they are not our sovereign masters at all. When you are acting, heeding to pain and pleasure, you are acting as a slave to these things. These are given by your biology or by your nature, laws of nature or physics. According to this, who oppose that, supreme ethical standard is one which treats people as an end and which is universally applicable. These people, they are emphasizing on keeping one thing, that is people as an end. At the same time, that thing has to be universally applied. It is known as categorical imperative. Categorical imperative is a very, very important component of the larger thing known as deontology. Deon means duty. Do your duty, that is enough. Don't think about the outcomes. Deon means duty. And like consequentialism, deontology is a broader one. In deontology, one of the important and most important representative is the categorical imperative given by Immanuel Kant, a German philosopher. Right? We'll discuss upon what is categorical imperative, what is deontology later. So these were the objections by Kant. Kant is one of the most important thinkers. You might have heard Kant thinks in even in physics with respect to formation of universe, all these things. Very, very deep thinker. We'll discuss about him when we take up moral thinkers and philosophers in a big way. As of now, please concentrate on the concept. What is that? What are we? Why we are here? We are here in the search of what is the supreme ethical standard. Most accepted is ends. That we somehow have said that this is not at all the thing. This is a big nonsense. There's no logic here. And we come up with deontology to directly oppose these things. Moving forward, these are the broad outlines, the two most important, most often accepted things: consequentialism, deontology. Consequences means ethics is located in consequence. Deontology, ethics is located in the means, in the duty, in the rights. Next is libertarianism. Libertarianism, my dear students, often you get confused and you are not having clarity with respect to what is liberty. As of now, liberty you can take it as freedom. Libertarianism, fundamental right to liberty. They say that we all have the fundamental basic right to freedom. That which is giving maximum liberty, that which is giving maximum freedom is the one which is ethical. I am a boy. I want to wear certain kind of dress. I want to do certain kind of things. Please allow me to do whatever I want. I have got the fundamental rights to freedom to do whatever I want. Who are you to say that this is wrong, this is right? Who are you to say that you should not involve in some relations that is bad? Who are you to say these things? I have got some fundamental rights of freedom. That is the one which is ethical. Why, you may ask then? The answer for this is we own ourselves. We own ourselves. Rahul, Sai Rahul, please mute your phone. Why they have to be given fundamental right of liberty? Why you should be given freedom? Why you should have liberty? The answer is we own ourselves. This body is mine. This hand is mine. I have earned by teaching in various institutions, daily teaching some 8 to 10 hours. I work nearly 15 hours per day. I got some money. So all this thing is mine. I have taken, I'm getting more than 10 lakhs per year. Means, who are you to say that give me 30% as tax? For 1 year, I am getting say 10 lakh. Means 30% means almost you are asking 1/3. Means almost you are asking 4 months of my labor. Means 4 months I am working without being given money. Means 4 months I am a slave. Isn't it? Because you are not enjoying the fruits of your labor. You are made to work 4 months without any fruit. This is my money. I have earned this legally. Then society, the state doesn't have any right on this one. Because we own ourselves. Not only this one, our body. This body I own myself. So what is the problem with you? Whether I am a homosexual or heterosexual, whether I am doing prostitution or whether I am involved in drug abuse? Who are you to say? We own ourselves. We own this pen is mine. I have money. I'll take a Benz car. Who are you to say that that is wrong? Lavishness. This is the argument. That which gives maximum freedom is the one which is ethical, because we own ourselves. The central claim is that each of us have the fundamental right to liberty, the right to do whatever we want. We have got the fundamental right to liberty, the fundamental right to freedom, the right to do whatever we want, anything which we are, with ourselves and with the things we own. With ourselves, this hand is mine. I can, if I want, I can cut it and give you, because that is mine. Who are you to say like that? This body is mine. I can commit suicide. Provided, very important thing, we respect the other's right to the same. Provided we respect the people's rights to do the same. Means they also should be given the same liberty. Your liberty can be curtailed only when it is coming in the other's liberty. The central tenet, central claim of libertarianism is we own ourselves. Each of us have the fundamental right to liberty, the right to do whatever we want, either with ourselves or the things we own. But we respect the other's rights, other freedom at the same time. This is a very, very important thing. They are the libertarians, they are in favor of unrestricted market. So the libertarians are favoring. Why they are favoring? What they are favoring? They are favoring markets, not in the name of economic efficiency. Markets are based on the principle of demand and supply. They are more efficient. That is the reason why we are going for privatizing the public sector organizations. But in the name of human freedom, market is giving what individuals have. Market is giving choice. If there is unrestricted market, you can get whatever you want. You will be allowed to take whatever you want. If there is if there is no unrestricted market, you will be controlled by the state. So, my dear students, libertarians favor unrestricted market. Why? Because it is giving more freedom, not because it is giving more, it is working efficiently. They are not concerned with efficiency. Very important. Libertarians are concerned with only liberty, only freedom of the individuals, because we own ourselves. We should be allowed to do everything what we think of. Our freedom, our liberty should be restricted only when it is coming in the way of others' freedom. It is possible when there is unrestricted market, not the control of the state or anyone. Next, libertarians want only a minimum state. Very important, please concentrate here. They are not saying that we don't want state. What they are saying, only a minimum state. Minimum state means as small as possible, as little as possible. That minimum state which is present, that one which enforces contracts, which protects the people against force and fraud, which protects the private property from theft, keep peace, and they oppose the welfare state. Any state that does more than this is morally unjust. So what is the business of government? What is the business of the state? It has to do with some basic minimum things. Just contracts, you have to enforce in the contracts. Protect people against force, fraud, law and order, all these things. Protection of private property and keep its law and order peace. These are the things which are favored. State cannot assume the welfare concept. If state does something with welfare concept, then it is unjustified, it's unethical morally. In the name of welfare state, say for example, I am getting 10 lakh. In the name of welfare state, you are taxing me 30%. Means you are taking 3 lakhs from me and you are spending on the people. This is not acceptable. Say you want to have enforce the contract. To have peace, law and order, state needs some money. So you take how much? You take only some 30,000 or 50,000. What is needed? Don't use my money for others' welfare. State should be minimum. Very carefully using the term minimum. Minimum means bare minimum things like law and order, enforcement of the contract, all these things. Not welfare oriented. If the state is doing those things, it is morally unjust. It is unethical. Let me introduce to one of the important concepts, very, very important. Often you will be using this one in social justice, all these things. Welfare state. Welfare state refers to a type of governing in which the government plays a key role in the protection and promotion of the economic and social well-being of the citizen. Please concentrate here. So welfare state, what is welfare state? Welfare state is one type of governing in which the government plays a key role in the protection and promotion of the economic and social well-being of the citizens. Any minimal state is not allowed to do these things. Here, you are protecting, you are promoting the economic and the social well-being of the citizens also. Why it is providing, why it is protecting the social economic well-being of the citizens? It is based on the principle of equality of opportunity, equitable distribution of wealth, public responsibility for those unable to avail themselves of the minimum provisions of a good life. Example is your social security program, welfare payments to people unable to work or the welfare state. Here, say for example, all senior citizens means 60 and above, below poverty line, they will be given 1,000 per month. Why? Because public has the responsibility for those unable to avail themselves of the minimum provisions of good life. There should be equitable distribution of the wealth. There should be equal opportunities. That is the reason why we are going for welfare state. Pension schemes, welfare programs, all are the examples. So what is a welfare state? Welfare state is a one where government plays a key role in the protection and promotion of the economic and social well-being of the citizens. It is not favored by your libertarians. And at the same time, they oppose government regulation in three important things. They reject or oppose three types of policies and laws of the modern states. So I repeat, they favor something. What they favor? They favor market, unrestricted market. Why they favor market? Because it gives more freedom, not because it is selfish. On the other hand, they favor only minimum state, not welfare state. And similarly, they oppose or reject paternalism, moral legislation, redistribution of income. Very, very important thing. This may be asked in your interview, and it is very, very useful for your essay, all these things. What is this one? What is this paternalism? Parent, you can think that and remember as parents. What does parents do? Restricting their children's freedom. Restricting their children's freedom. Why? Because it is their responsibility to see that the children grow properly. Similarly, to put the things in a concrete way, restricting others' freedom and responsibilities in their supposed interest. So you are taking something, you are asking someone, you are restricting some freedom. Why? In their supposed interest. Example is this one. Car seat belt laws, motorcycle helmet laws. See, if I have drunk and I am driving, you can prohibit me, saying that you will go and like hit another individual. When I am drunk, I may go and hit another individual. So you can restrict my freedom, restrict my liberty. But when I am not wearing seat belt, how is it affecting others? How is it coming in the way of others' freedom? Thinking that if there is some pollution, you may just jump outside your car. So we always say that you wear the seat belt. Motorcycle helmet laws. See, I'm not drunk, but wearing helmet is not convenient for me. It is not comfortable for me. I stay in a village. Is there any need for helmet there 24/7 whenever I take a bike? Today you are saying that head is a very, very important part, so you have to wear helmet. Next day you say that no, along with head, legs are also very, very important. If you fall, legs may be like you may injure. So always whenever you are driving a bike, you have to wear shoes because they're more vulnerable. So what if government comes with a law that all the people who ride bike should wear shoes, should wear helmet? Why they are saying that? They are paternalism. They are restricting your freedom and they are asking you to do something in your own interest. The state has no right to dictate what risks they might take with their body and lives. This is my body. This is my life. See, I am a smoker. I am a smoker of cigarette. You can prohibit me smoking in public place. Why? It's a very important prohibition of smoking in public place. Why? Because it is coming in the way of other freedom in public place. They don't want to inhale your smoke. But you are smoking privately in your home. What's there? Then you don't have the liberty. Then you don't have the right to say that drinking, like smoking is bad, leave it. It is my body. I know what are the things. You don't have right to dictate what are the risks I am taking. Wear seat belt, wear helmet. You can't say these things. So they're against paternalism. Similarly, no moral legislation. What does this mean? They oppose using coercive forces of law to promote notions of virtues, notions of what is good, to express the moral convictions of the majority, example, prostitution, homosexuality. So there is no moral legislation that you can impose. They oppose using coercive forces of law to promote the notions of virtue according to society or according to the moral convictions of the majority. Indulging in sexual relations or selling your body for money is not a good one. Moral majority think that homosexuality is bad. So you cannot force those things. So they oppose paternalism with restricting your freedom in your own interest because we know what risk we are taking. And they say that no moral legislation. Don't tell me what is right and what is wrong. Don't impose the moral convictions of the majority. Give my freedom. I own my body. I own the things which I want. I should be allowed to spend them as I want. That is their argument. Prostitution may be morally objectionable to many people, but that does not justify laws that prevent consenting adults from engaging in it. What is wrong in prostitution? Both have consulted, both have made some agreement. Let them do the thing. Majorities in some communities may disapprove homosexuality, but that does not justify the laws that deprive gay men and lesbians of the right to choose their sexual partners for themselves. I am the one who want to marry. You are telling me whom to marry. This is wrong. So, no moral legislation, no redistribution of the income or wealth which we have discussed. They oppose any law that requires some people to help others. If I am doing something willfully, if I give charity out of the 10 lakhs, what I'm taking, if I give 5 lakhs, take it. Don't force me to pay taxes. Redistributive taxes are a form of coercion. They are a form of theft. The state has no more right to force affluent taxpayers to support the social programs for the poor than a benevolent thief has the right to steal money from the rich people and give it to the homeless. Please compare this. It's very logical argument. A benevolent thief, what he is doing? He is also doing the thing. He's stealing money from the rich and giving that to the poor. What right is this person has to steal from me and give to the poor? Is this a curse that I work hard and I get money? It is a modern form of slavery. You're taking the labor, 4 months of my labor. You're making it work for 4 months. I'm not getting the fruits of my labor. Will you work for 4 months without being paid? That is 30% of the things which you are taking. It is just state is acting like a thief. They're taking money from me. I'm not willing to give. Anything required for maintaining the minimal state. Some may argue, sir, we have to run the social programs. All yes, for minimal state, for law and order, for enforcement of the contractor. If there is money needed, we have to pay. We will pay. Not for the social programs. There is one person who is a drunkard. There is one person who is not reading, who has come for civil service preparation and he is involved in many other things. Afterwards, he is unemployed. He is not having money. You are taking my money. I have worked day in and day out, and you are giving to this person. It's just like a benevolent thief. It's wrong according to them. Main important proponents in this regard are Frederick Hales, Milton Friedman, Robert Nozick, and John Locke. And there are many other people with respect to this thing. We will study all of them when we take up moral thinkers and philosophers. Just you should have an understanding of these people. Especially why I took this is with respect to Robert Nozick's distributive justice. These concepts are very, very important. He says that there is nothing wrong with economic inequality. Nozick says that there is nothing wrong in economic inequality as such. Just by the fact that there are more crores, while others, few have more crores, while others are penniless, doesn't enable you to conclude anything about justice or injustice of the arrangement. Say, for example, Tatas and Birlas. Your Virat Kohli, your Shah Rukh Khan, they are getting money in crores. On the other hand, there are many who are not getting even minimum things to need. It doesn't mean that Shah Rukh Khan, your Virat Kohli, your Tatas, Birlas, Ambanis, they are cheaters. Are they cheaters? Is there anything which is unjust? Just because of there is inequality, you cannot say that this is injustice. Take the example of Ambani brothers, Anil and Mukesh. In fact, Anil got very, very good fortune compared to Mukesh. For many reasons, Anil now is almost, they say, banker. Then is it right to take 50% of the money from Mukesh and give that to Anil? Just because there are inequalities, it doesn't mean that the arrangement is unjust. There is nothing wrong with economic inequality as such. Just by the fact that you have crores while others are penniless doesn't enable you to conclude anything about the justice or injustice of the arrangement. Don't you feel that, my dear students? According to Nozick, distributive justice depends on two requirements: justice in initial holdings, justice in transfer. What does this mean? If you have got the money initially in a just way, if you have got the money, resources in a just way, resources used to make your money are legitimately yours, initial amount. Justice in transfer, if you made your money either through free exchange in the marketplace or from voluntary gifts bestowed upon you. See, you can take the gifts also, but voluntarily given. Or in the market, they are for free market. In free market, you earn. Then there is nothing injustice. the amount through which you are earning the profit, the resources you used to make your money were legally yours. You have got, say, for example, 1 crore rupees, which is legally yours. Maybe it has come from anywhere, from your father or anything. If it is legally yours, then there is no problem of inequality. And if you make money by market forces, free exchange in the market, or if someone voluntarily gives, then there's nothing wrong. If the beneficiaries of the past injustice are there, then remedying the injustice should be done. Then should be redistribution for the sake of redressing the past wrong, not for the sake of bringing about greater equality. See here, if there is injustice, if there is any past injustice, if I have looted 10,000 from you, means that is injustice. There can be distribution of the income. Why? To remedy the injustice. You can ask this person to give this money back with some fine. Why? Because to bring justice, not to bring about equality. So, according to libertarians, according to Nozick, you can go for redistribution only when there is past injustice. Remedying the injustice only for that, not to bring about greater equality. Right? These are some of the things with respect to libertarian. Still, we have got many thinkers whom we'll discuss later in depth.